Good morning and welcome to the 8th meeting of the Social Justice and Social Security Committee for 2026. Our first item of business is a decision on whether to take items 4, 5 and 6 in private. Are we all agreed? Thank you. Our next item of business is a roundtable discussion on the Job Start payment, and I very much welcome our witnesses for today's meeting. Graham Henry, Head of Government, Parliamentary and Stakeholder Engagement, Skills Development Scotland. Zara Kitson, Senior Head of Government Partnerships, King's Trust. Karen Dunning, Chief Operating Officer, Social Security Scotland. And Joe Derrick, CEO of Scottish Through Care and Aftercare Forum. And we have apologies from Alexander Stewart. So the meeting is a roundtable format which we hope will enable a free-flowing conversation, and the committee is very much in listening mode today. So again, if you just indicate to me or the clerks if you would like to speak. And we intend to focus on three main themes today. We have about an hour and 15 minutes for the session. So I encourage members and witnesses to be succinct in your answers, in your questions, and answers. So I am going to introduce the first theme, which concerns support for young people seeking employment. So let me actually kick off. Okay, so the first theme is about the adequacy and coherence of current support for young people seeking employment and suggestions for young people and any improvements. I don't know if anyone would like to come in on that. Yeah, Claire, yeah.
Thank you, Convener. It's just to I suppose, start the discussion. Looking at the figures, so since 2019, the figures we have is that in No One Left Behind, 34% of young people entered employment. So that's about a third. So I'm interested with the other 66% and why the figure sits at around about a third. Would we expect that to be higher, or is that a reasonable success rate for the type of support that's been offered, or are there issues in there that is leading to just a third of them reaching employment? I don't know, Joe, if you want to maybe start, and then whoever wants to come in.
Yeah, no problem, thank you. So overall, my specific area will be around about care experienced young people and transition into adulthood, therefore from a care leavers perspective. From our experience and engaging with young people and the workforce, the numbers for care experienced young people are still significantly lower than one would want, one would hope, in order for them to have the opportunity to flourish. It's also recognised that care experienced young people will have, I've got my numbers all of a sudden, but essentially they have, they're less likely to be in employment, and when they are, they're actually also less likely to be having the same opportunity to earn as their friends and peers in the general population. So there are significant pieces of work that are in place to be able to support young people into employment, and I think probably one of the key messages I would say is that is around about the wraparound support that is key. That would be really important for us to acknowledge, and the relationship-based approach to being able to support in the short, medium and long term. But the short answer to your question is there's certainly much more that can be done, and we would want to be able to increase that employment opportunities.
I'm happy to come in. So yeah, I mean, I think it's specifically calling out the young people that go into a job destination. And I think from our experience working with young people, so King's Trust supports this year, it will be nearly 7,000 young people to support them to achieve an education and employment and start up in business. And we target our support specifically to more disadvantaged young people, those with kind of multiple complex needs and often have experienced trauma in their background. For young people, actually, so job is one outcome, but it's not the only outcome. So, from our experience of delivering employability services, for a lot of young people, actually, the best next step for them is further education, is going into college, and that might actually give them a better pathway into a more meaningful, sustainable career and employment kind of onwards. So I would anticipate that some of that is the 34% is just because it's just focusing on the job outcome of No One Left Behind services, whereas for our services, and we're part of a consortium with Action for Children and Bernardo's as well, the Young Persons Consortium collectively, we support over 10,000 young people across all local authorities to kind of make their next steps into employment. And 3 in 4 of the young people that we support do go on to a positive destination, but not all of it is a job. So I would imagine that's maybe some of that. But we do know that actually from our experiences, that for young people at the moment, the needs that they're presenting with is multiple and complex. Mental health barriers have increased for young people, specifically on the back of COVID. I think for young people that have kind of developed through that stage and kind of coming of age during that time, they now need more intensive support to actually kind of gain basic skills, confidence, teamwork, being able to actually leave the house, navigate getting on a bus. We're finding that for a lot of young people, the journey times and support needs are a lot longer than they used to be. So in terms of what kind of we would, typically a journey to take young people from where they were to kind of getting a job, it's now a lot longer in the kind of foundational elements of what we do. So we do kind of earlier stage interventions. We're seeing a lot more demand for that type of support. And it takes a long time then to get young people to that later stage when they're at that kind of job readiness. So, and that's a shared experience across the Young Persons Consortium.
And in terms of the pot of money we're talking about today, which is quite small, it's not a big pot of money, but it is money that's focused on the end point where a young person's entering employment. Is that the best way or the best focus where the money should be? Because you're suggesting that they need as much support to get to that stage. Is there enough support for them to get to that stage so they can access this fund?
Yeah. I think you need both. I mean, we know that for a lot of young people, the financial barrier is very stark, and it's quite. It's a change to, actually if they've been reliant on benefits and in a culture of potentially families reliant on benefits and worried about what it will mean if they start a job and actually if they'll be better off or not. But I think absolutely the financial incentive can help. And that's the feedback that we got from youth workers who said that often kind of the main supports that young people are looking for, it's for kind of clothing, it's for childcare and it's for travel. And it also aligns with, so we've got a development award that we also distribute to young people that's kind of got the same aims as the Job Start payment, that's about supporting young people with that kind of, it's almost like the last financial barrier to achieving the outcome. And over the last year, over 600 development awards have been distributed by the King's Trust to young people. And I guess the difference for that is for us, it's about 2 weeks from when a young person applies to when they access that. And it's important that they get the award in quite a fast turnaround, because actually there could be a gap between them getting their last benefit payment and then receiving their salary, and that's when they can face harsh circumstances, and that's kind of not what you need when you're starting a new job and you're not sure how you're going to pay your bus fare or whatever to kind of get to work or be able to have money to pay for your lunch. So so I think it's absolutely necessary, but for us it's you need the wraparound support, much like Joe was saying, that kind of one-to-one wraparound support, trauma-informed, needs-led, targeted, alongside group work. I think you need both and again, in our experience, in terms of young people accessing our development awards, it's usually a trusted adult, whether it's a youth worker or kind of key worker that applies for it on the young person's behalf. And I think that can be part of what kind of removes the barrier, whereas the Job Start payment is more likely to be the young person. As I understand it, they would be doing the application process, but there's challenges there for them just in terms of, young people don't tend to work on laptops, they have mobile devices. I don't think that the application is fully mobile enabled. There's kind of these kind of barriers that can just get in the way of the young people getting them. But I think where we can support youth workers, key workers, those actually working with these groups of young people to know more about it and to support them through the application process, I think there might be some benefit.
Yeah, I think we'll come to the other questions around that, but I don't know, Graham, if you want to say anything about the kind of first area around the adequacy of support for young people seeking employment.
Yeah, I think in picking up on what Zara said, there is a lot of support out there for individuals, but it varies from area to area. And one of the ways in which SDS tries to support is by enabling the system to have some elements of universality or some consistency across it to support those variety of partners operating in every area. So there's a couple of key areas that we would see for some of the support to try and pull that together. So one is the local employability partnerships. Each of them are key. Every local authority has got its own local employability partnership, and we'll pull partners from third sector and from national agencies such as ourselves to try and shape those services. They are led through local authorities, and we are a supporting partner in that space, as others will be. One of the other areas is around about data-driven and insight, so that people can access the most up-to-date and best information to identify and support and target those young people you most want to get into employment or most at risk. So we manage the participation portal, and the participation portal is an insight and robust data set that supports all key partners. It captures information from when a young person goes through to school all the way through, so individuals can be tracked and they can be monitored. So, for example, if a young person leaves school and they move into college and they were to at some point leave that, the college will then input data into our system, which would then allow the local employability partnership to identify that young person has moved into unemployment or into employment. So having that access is really key to the local partners so that they can all shape their services around it. As well as that, it can also identify flags such as disability, care leaver, so that you can focus on those most at risk. As Zara was saying, that individual needs are different, but being able to focus and identify and profile what's happening in each area, we would say would be key to each local employability partnership area for trying to target them. Also recognising what you said around about the amount of people who move into employment. People move into different destinations, they move in at different times. Some of that's about what's ready for them, but we know that some destinations have very high retention rates and attainment rates. So SDS, we would highlight the benefits of apprenticeships. Round about that, they have a very high attainment rate. Scottish apprenticeships are the highest in the UK. The retention rate's high. And actually, they're disproportionately skewed towards people from the lowest SIMDs. So there's benefits from focusing in those areas. But sometimes, for individuals, they may need to work with a multitude of agencies, through care, aftercare, King's Trust, to get and build their skills to be ready to access them.
Do you want to come back in, Zara, and then I'll let Jo in, sorry.
Thanks. Yes, just to kind of follow on from that in terms of, because the LEPs are key because of the way the system currently works, and that no one left behind funding and the kind of policies activated through local authority and at a local level. Our experience as a Scotland-wide organisation, and again Bernardo's Action for Children, we're all kind of national organisations that reach into all communities across Scotland. But we've noticed that the system's become very fragmented for young people on the ground, actually. I think, we used to all receive funding through European social funds, and that meant that, we had more of a national approach where we could then, as the kind of young persons consortium, alongside other organisations, we could target support to where it was needed. The way it works at the moment is that you have 32 local authorities each doing their own commissioning for services. So then, as providers, we have to have 32 individual arrangements with each local authority, and it's a bit of a patchwork quilt. Now, what that means in practice is that actually for some of our services, we have to ring-fence cohorts based on the funding we've got available. So we could, like, we've got a big kind of youth hub in Glasgow that services Glasgow City region, and we want to make sure that young people have got choice in their offer when they come to us, so that actually if they come because they're interested in, you know, getting a career in the NHS, and we work with NHS as an employer partner, or if they want to get into construction, that actually they can have a tailored journey based on where they want to go. Now, because of the fragmentation of the funding in the system at the moment, it means that actually if we might say that actually for some young people, if we've only got funding for a construction programme in Renfrewshire, then we can only offer that programme to young people with a Renfrewshire postcode. Or if young people from kind of other areas wanted to travel into Glasgow to access some of our courses, again, it would be dependent on, because if it was Glasgow City Council funded, it would only be Glasgow City Council young people that would be eligible to access those courses. And it doesn't really translate to travel to work areas or the way that local economies work for people or for young people. So that's been quite a challenge for us on the ground. And that was from kind of European Social Fund, then ended, and then we moved to UK Shared Prosperity Fund, which was UK government driven, but again locally dispersed through local authority areas. And that meant that we had scenarios where, you know, we had some young people that lived in Fife and wanted to access some of our programmes in Edinburgh, but actually they couldn't because the only funding we had was UK SPF, and if it was an Edinburgh-based programme, it was only for Edinburgh-based young people, even though that's a reasonable travel to work requirement. So some of that has meant that the system has become very fragmented for young people, and although, you know, the kind of no one left behind is good in principle and it's all ages, in our experience as a kind of targeted specialist youth provider, young people have been a bit lost in the system, and there isn't the same momentum or focus on youth unemployment and kind of youth targeted policies. We are seeing more of that come out of Westminster at the moment, which has been great in terms of, you know, kind of really a lot of momentum and focus around youth unemployment as a kind of priority issue. We're seeing kind of, you know, UK-wide or kind of national programmes coming out targeted to young people. We're not really seeing the same coming out of the Scottish system, and I think there is a risk that young people in Scotland could be left behind.
Thanks for that, Zara. Joel, would you like to come in?
Thank you. Yes. I suppose one of the things that I was reflecting as people have been speaking as well is I'm aware there was an invitation that had been extended for young people to be involved at committee today, and appreciate that unfortunately that's not been able to be the case. And I think beyond this we would want to extend an invitation to be able to have a conversation with young people still, and those that are involved in employability more broadly, as well as the particular one, the Job Start payment. I'll mention two pieces of work very briefly that have happened, because these are very much aligned with the work around about the promise that everyone is looking to keep by 2030 at the latest. Let's be ambitious about even more so about what can happen ahead of that time. And this has involved young people, because the work that we do is co-designed with young people in workforce. So there was a piece of work around about the moving on and that transition to adulthood. And one of the key messages that came from that was about financial literacy. And the importance of financial literacy, but that was a gap that young people felt that they had, and the workforce that support them also felt was missing from the system. And there are different interventions to be able to provide support, but they would, again, you could argue that they will be dependent on the geographic location that a young person is involved in, and the capacity and availability of their worker to be able to support and signpost them. And we know that there is a real capacity stretching within through care and aftercare that I can speak to specifically. So I think there's a part of this broader bit is also about the understanding and awareness around about finances available, rights and entitlements and there. The other one is a co-design piece of work that actually was linked to modern apprenticeships, because they undertook a blueprinting exercise for a pilot for a minimum income guarantee linked into modern apprenticeships. And this was again in recognition of the dropout rate for care leavers involved in the modern apprenticeships. But crucially, I think bringing back to modern apprenticeships, we wouldn't have identified that as a route. It was young people in the work that they then explored that said this is actually where a pilot might make sense. And I think probably the bit that is really helpful in all of this, and underpinning all of this, is young people having to look at the intersectionality of the benefits that they receive. Because in every conversation that we have, one of the first things we'll hear is, yes, that's interesting to explore, because before we even started that conversation was, is this something you would like us to look at and into with you and on your behalf? And the challenge is, it can't impact on my housing benefit. It can't impact on this. And I think there's a part that might surface through this work as well, which is the impact it has for short-term interventions, for what that means in the longer term, and that balancing act that young people are having to try and manage with the best of intentions that are around the supports.
You represent as care, young people in care, so it maybe doesn't apply, but I suppose it's about generational poverty. I think when we talk about impact on benefits of a household, a young person will often be living at home with their families, and if you're in a house where benefits, is that a barrier to young people taking up employment, that their employment would have an impact on the household income if they're still staying at home or with?
Yeah,
do you find that?
And I think because and I guess they, you know, if they're in a family where the experience is that, you know, and their actual experience is that they are better off as a family, kind of on benefits, then obviously there would be a nervousness from family members as well, and that can be a challenge just in terms of, you know, supporting young people to kind of have the right, you know, kind of mentorship to see beyond their immediate family circumstance to kind of work towards something for themselves, because they're not always getting the encouragement at home that's kind of, you know, encouraging them and supporting them to, which is why you need the kind of trusted adults, your youth workers, the kind of other people that can support young people to think differently and kind of outside of their immediate circumstance to kind of a future where they can build a bit of a different life for themselves.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to invite Karen in, but before I do, just picking up on one of the comments that you made, Joe, was in relation to young people. And yeah, we did reach out as a committee to invite them along. And as convener, I have met with the members from the Scottish Youth Parliament in terms of hearing their lived experience as well and bringing them in committees and hearing from them direct, because I think that's really, you know, a hugely important, and that will actually form part of our legacy report moving forward to the next committee in the next session, and hopefully, you know, it's a strong key theme that comes across as well. So, but I'll bring Karen in. Thank you.
Thank you. I mean, I'm conscious we've got questions that, as we go on around kind of uptake and things on Job Start Payment. So just in terms of the part it plays, I suppose, here and what it's done. So colleagues will know it is a Scottish-only benefit. So just looking at the statistics, since the launch in 2020 of Job Start Payment, there have been 6,360 individuals that have received a Job Start Payment, totalling over £2 million. I think we're acutely conscious and had put in our evidence pack that it is one of our lower uptake benefits, and I think just listening to stakeholders around the room, some of that is really evident, and we understand the kind of blockers and barriers to it. Obviously there was an evaluation done in 2022 of some of those blockers and barriers and things that were impacting on young people feeling able to apply. What we have seen across the board is that the kind of denial rates and the take-up rates have remained fairly consistent after a spike following launch. So, you know, really interesting to hear stakeholders' feedback, really keen to listen to and hear different ways that we can promote the benefit. Obviously, I'm here from a Social Security Scotland perspective, so sadly not in charge of the policy and the strategy around benefit take-up, but of course those are things that we continue to look at, both from a Scottish Government perspective and a Social Security Scotland perspective, to see how we can better promote support and get the support to the young people who are entitled to it. So it'd be interesting also to hear kind of where it does have an impact, and it does bridge that gap that Zara was talking around earlier between kind of a young person leaving unemployment and going into employment, and that bridge between and support of providing some funding for the clothing, the bus pass if they've got childcare, and of course the eligibility criteria is more nuanced and less hard to navigate, I suppose, for care leavers deliberately, recognising that they have a different eligibility criteria to apply for Job Start payment.
Okay, thank you. Before I bring, I'm going to invite Bob in. Yeah, thanks.
Thanks. That was really interesting, Karen, and it's quite frustrating because other themes will explore lots of the things you mentioned there, so I'm resisting from following up on any of that just now. The Convener's original question was about adequacy of that wider support this for all stakeholders that want to respond, but also the coherence. From what I'm hearing is it's quite hard to make a judgment on that adequacy because of the fragmentation of it all, pulling it all together and reporting on it. And I suspect that would be another committee, not this committee, that would look at that, but that informs our discussions on Job Start. But in relation to coherence, that is of interest because we always talk about social security being a shared space between Scottish and UK governments. The job search duties very much is on DWP, Job Centre Plus, that area with employability and skills often been devolved to this place, which brings in the coherence question. So I wonder if any of the witnesses have got any comments to make about like the local employability partnership. Does that involve DWP as well? What is the role of work coaches within all of this, job centres, and how does that knit together? So whether it's adequate or not, the dots still have to be joined in a coherent fashion. So is that happening?
So yes is the short answer. We obviously work really closely with DWP to support that information sharing in job centres, working with work coaches. It's one of the key ways that we can get information to young people and equally get that feedback from young people back into the system. So, you know, we hold regular engagement sessions with DWP. We obviously have strategic relationships with DWP and operational relationships all the way through the different levels. So, you know, we've done different bespoke events with job centres, hosted online events with DWP work coaches, and we are obviously promoting through different things like work fairs and all of those things. So I think we have the right levels of relationships and the ongoing strategic and operational forums to have those discussions, to get the information out and to make sure that the young people get the information and support around the benefits and the entitlements that they can get through the Scottish system.
Okay, what about other witnesses? Because I'm seeing from my notes that there's a Universal Credit Youth offer. Sorry, Graham. Apologies.
Absolutely. You're agreeing with Karen there in terms of there is cohesion at a local level. That doesn't mean every area is the same. Some areas will be stronger than others, just depending on the nature of the area. But generally speaking, within a LEP, you will have SDS will be in there. You'll have the local authorities. You'll have third sector partners, and DWP would be part of that. But there can also be quite strong collective decision making within them, which I think is a strength, whereby some of the planning and some of the commissioning will be shared and discussed. So that will all sit with one area within it for who holds the contracts, but the collective awarding and planning is a really key aspect around some of that aspect. On an operational level, one of the areas that we're seeing a lot of movement on, particularly for ourselves, is that we've moved into a lot more community delivery rather than having our standalone offices. So we now have over 230 community locations that we deliver in, many of them in partnership with DWP, many of them in partnership with third sector partners or colleges. And that was in response to some of the career review findings about the need to be in the community where young people would recognise, rather than in a what might be seen as a more traditional location. So there's very much about shaping and enhancing services there. There's one other area I'd just highlight as well, which is in relation to regional skills planning. So beyond just the local authority, but the regions. One of the areas we're really keen on in there is ensuring that the evidence base and the insight, the labour market intelligence, allows people to make the best decisions locally and have that kind of coherence of planning. So we have good connections in there and there's strong regional partnerships, which will include actions towards youth unemployment within them.
Zara, do you want to come in?
Yeah, so just to pick up on, you know, that kind of, I guess, the relationship between WP and Social Security Scotland. So the King's Trust, our Glasgow centre, and like many of our centres across the UK, are youth hubs. So it's kind of multi-agency approach, and we have DWP Job Coach in our centre through the week, but it's a specialist team for DWP that are focused on young people. So their caseload is all young people, and they have got specialist skill to work with young people, which again is something that, as a Young Persons Consortium, we would advocate for in the employability system, that you need a specialist approach for young people. It can't just be a mainstream employability offer. And so I think that works very well. I guess what I don't know is the intersection between Social Security Scotland and the DWP Youth Hub models, because I think for me it seems like that would be, you know, a really good opportunity to kind of operationally maybe make something a bit stronger. And, you know, we would, you know, welcome even having Social Security Scotland based in our centre as part of that multi-agency approach alongside DWP. You know, I think there's these things that would, and we know that for young people, you know, kind of they would much rather come to a youth hub than go to a job centre, because they feel like it's their space, it's trusted, they kind of know us, and all of the services offered in the centre, and there's a range of different kind of council and third sector services. They see us all as just one, you know, kind of joined up, and they trust all the services that are there. So I think that's quite a good way to overcome some of the barriers, but also then it means that the kind of Social Security Scotland staff can have quite a strong connectivity to people working within the system in that multi-agency way, to kind of get the information out quicker to those that have got the connectivity to those young people that they're supporting into work.
Okay, thanks. I know Claire wanted to come in quickly, and then Elena, thanks.
Thank you. It's maybe Karen that's best answering it. So Zara mentioned the jobs guarantee for 18 to 21-year-olds that the UK Government's introducing, which is expected to start in the spring in areas in Scotland. Will they be eligible to apply for the Job Start fund, and do we expect an increase in applications for the fund linked to that programme?
There have been recent discussions between Scottish Government officials and DWP partnership and engagement teams regarding that job guarantee process. So I think the first jobs are expected to start in May, but it's unclear to us at the moment whether or not any of those first jobs will be actually based in Scotland. The expectation is that young people entering those roles may well be eligible for Job Start payment, and so there is ongoing conversation and exploration of joined up working between Social Security and DWP. So those conversations are ongoing, but we are docked in having the right conversations around the UK Jobs Guarantee at the moment.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks. Elena.
Yeah, it was just following on from something that Graham said. So in the area that I represent, we've got a hub called SL66, which is in East Ayrshire. We've also got SL33, which is in the Kilmarnock. So we've got one in Cumnock and one in Kilmarnock. And they're really round about that kind of youth hub model that really, you know, Skills Development Scotland, the local authority, DWP, and indeed I think Social Security Scotland are going to be part of that, as well as the educational system. So in terms of Job Start payment, thinking about that, how do we ensure that those places actually are up to date on supporting young people to actually, you know when they're eligible for that and how to apply for that? Because obviously that's just one little strand of all of the amazing things that happen within those centres, which for a lot of young people, that's the one place that they feel connected to, which is you know, they're not going to go into the job centre, they're maybe not going to go somewhere else. But that setting, which is very much like a youth club, a youth model, you know, will bring them in. So how do we make sure that they can actually get the support to access Job Start?
So that's a really good example of where young people access services and how we as agencies need to adapt to meet their needs. So there's a combination of ways to ensure young people can be aware of those services. So there's one through national organisations such as ourselves. So having that national reach allows us to get a consistency of information out to our staff so that they're aware. In Careers Week back in November, we worked with Social Security Scotland, and they held some webinars and some sessions for our frontline careers advisors to make them aware of the Job Start payment. So we can obviously use that, and we can use our communication channels. Building on that, you've also got the ability of national agencies such as ourselves, Social Security Scotland and others to link into the LEPs and the community planning partnerships to get that information to the frontline workers. So I would say it's a combination of those two, national and local. How do you get the information through each of them? Because there's no one way will work. It's a combination of all of them to try and move that information out there.
And finally, I mean, how do we ensure that the intersectionality of the benefits system, which is a really important point. You know, the work that I've done over the years working with care experienced young people and also other people experiencing homelessness and a whole comorbidity of issues means that that can be a massive thing for an individual in terms of what impact that might have on the rest of their family or indeed themselves, what they're receiving. So how do we make sure that there's people that have those skills within such hubs that they actually can support individuals to kind of work through all of the implications of, I mean, I don't think the Job Start payment itself is going to have a major impact on, the situation of a family, but there could be other implications from opportunities that somebody's going to take up.
So I'd actually pick up on something Zara said earlier, which was round about having staff with the specialisms and the skills to engage with those individuals. And there's a number of partners within the local areas will have that. The King's Trust have got it. Through Care Aftercare provides have got it. Many third sector provides have got it. SDS will also have some of that. So we, in our services, target and try and focus on those most at risk. That would be that client group there that you're referencing, because we know there's certain profiles and certain characteristics that put people most at risk. And if you can target your services in that, and that's based on Scottish Government's career strategy, which pushes us to do that, and it's a good thing. Once you target, you can build a relationship, and when you build a relationship, you've got more chance of being able to get the information to provide them with the right guidance and the right support to access the services that are most appropriate to them and tailor to them, rather than the universal offer, which on its own might not meet that individual's needs.
Okay, thank you. Would anyone else like to come in? I'm obviously conscious of the time and moving on to the next theme as well. And if anybody does want to come back, we might have time at the very end to return back to theme 1. What I was just going to mention quickly, just reflecting on what's been said so far. I'm aware, albeit I cover East Kilbride in my MSP's role, but I'm aware of a project within Edinburgh called Project Search. And what they do is it's more to do focused on young people with additional support needs. What they then do is they work with their carers and their parents and guardians, and they put them into placements. So they'll put them they work closely in that collaboration work in terms of the NHS, local government, and I'm just trying to ask or see what comments could be made in terms of the Job Start payment, how that works, because they could be put into placements like portering, for instance, or the stores area within a hospital, and then what happens is it maybe doesn't work for them. It's not, so they get an opportunity to try it out. It's almost like a taster session, and then there's the opportunity for them to get a full-time job out of it afterwards, and the skills that they've developed through that is absolutely key. But it's how that Job Start payment, how that works in terms of wraparound support for them as well. I don't know, Graham's nodding his head, so do you want to comment on that, Graham?
I probably can't answer the details of the Job Start payment part of the end itself. I would need to check in with some of our colleagues in that specifics, but I'm very familiar with Project Search. Okay. And they operate in a number of localities across Scotland, and have very strong links with the NHS, as you referenced. We did some partnership work in particular with them up in the Aberdeen area, and we did. We've got some details of that which I could write to you afterwards, Convener, and share just some of that work we've done with Project Search, which would be helpful for committee.
Okay, no, that would be really helpful to learn more in terms of how it ties in with the benefits as well. So thank you for that. Okay, I'm going to move on to theme 2, and I'm going to invite Marie McNair in. Thank you.
Thank you, Convener. Marie McNair, representing Clydebank and Mulgai constituency in the west of Scotland. So on theme 2, we're looking to hear your thoughts on how we can improve application rates. Karen, you spoke about your evaluation. What difference is the Job Start payment making to young people? And obviously, can you expand a bit more on how they're using it?
Yeah, sure. So Job Start payment, I think, as I said, over £2 million paid out since launch, 6,000 360 people, but that's from 17,000 applications that we had received. And picking up on Zara's point, I think what we do see from young people is that the majority of those applications are made online. So 93% of Job Start payment applications are made online. Obviously, we do offer different accessibility options. People can also contact us via telephone and make an application that way, and also the support of our local delivery teams out into the community. So in terms of kind of promoting Job Start payment, we're obviously have an ongoing and rolling communications campaign for all of our benefits, certainly tying into key events in the diary and calendar. So this week is National Apprenticeship Week, and not in a cynical attempt, I'm pleased to say that Social Security Scotland were able to put some comms out today with the promotion of Job Start payment and aligning, and as Graham said, working closely with Skills Development Scotland and DWP and other people to promote that. But I think we have to recognise it is a difficult benefit to promote. It's a one-off payment, and it is a payment at a point of need. And so actually it becomes something that people would only look at probably at the point that they become eligible for it, rather than something that's in the psyche, I think. And of course, what we will see through the statistics is that very early with the launch, we received quite a large number of applications on launch, but we were able to use different social media platforms that really reached that key demographic of young people. So TikTok and other things, which obviously we now can't utilise in accordance with Scottish Government guidance around security concerns. So we've definitely seen falling numbers of young people applying for the benefit as well. Just touching then very quickly on that 2022 evaluation, it found a couple of key things, which I think are probably still quite perennial, actually. So that was that young people were not always cognizant and knowing about the benefit that was available to them, that they found the benefit quite difficult to navigate. So the evidence requirements at that stage were to submit 5 pieces of evidence to prove the job offer. That was since reduced to 3. So that is broadly something from the employer, something from the individual, and confirmation of the start date. It also looked at extending the eligibility. So on launch, Job Start payment was available for individuals to apply 3 months after the job offer. It was extended to 6 months. So these changes have been made. The statistics obviously don't lie. What they don't show is a massive shift in terms of the number of people that are then applying and the number of people that are successful in their applications. Even when we did do the heavy promotion on the start-up of Job Start payment through TikTok and others, whilst we saw that real spike in applications, we still didn't see much of a change in the percentage of people that would qualify. So we've done other things to try and simplify the guidance that's available on gov.uk, samples of the type of evidence that can be submitted, and obviously internally in Social Security Scotland we've done lots to train our client advisors and others on what is the acceptable burden of proof, but we're not necessarily seeing a huge shift.
And just to confirm, obviously, as well, you know, in terms of encouraging take-up and obviously, you know, folk claiming UC, you know, having the posters, etc., the leaflets, etc.
Yes.
Have you sort of met at the senior level, just obviously to make sure that job coaches offer the Job Start payment?
Yeah, as I said, we have those ongoing relationships with DWP, so we're really conscious that work coaches and that relationship is key. So there's lots else that's happening. Obviously, again, we've referenced the work with Skills Development Scotland, the ongoing promotional campaigns, but also just trying to get the information out in a way that's accessible. You know, we really see stakeholders as having a key role here in being able to help support and promote the benefit to young people.
Thank you. Zara, in your written submission, you kind of mentioned the difficulties associated, with the application process. Is there anything you can sort of bring to the committee that, in terms of helping with improving that application process?
So, yeah, I mean, this was feedback from youth workers, that connect with young people and kind of gathered some of their experiences. So, I guess awareness was the biggest barrier. There wasn't enough awareness of the benefit, both from kind of young people and youth workers. And our youth workers specialise in employability, but it just isn't cut through. It's not reaching kind of our those specialist leads at the moment. But in terms of the actual application process, I think that it was kind of more about it being kind of mobile enabled. I don't know if it is at the moment or not, but there was a perception that it wasn't, and that there's kind of digital barriers to some of the application process coming through from and lack of clarity about eligibility. I think it wasn't always clear to youth workers or young people actually what the kind of eligibility is. And I guess from kind of looking at some of the context and background as well, some of the evidence requirements. I mean, we know from our experience, because we have to gather a lot of evidence to then be able to, draw down funds that support our work. And it is a challenge often getting evidence from young people in terms of their kind of pay slips or, their kind of IDs. And some of these are kind of quite hard barriers that we have to support young people to work through. Because young people also that have got, kind of mental health challenges or kind of more complex or chaotic lives, they've not got a nice tidy folder with all of their paperwork in order. That's just not how their lives work. So I think that, I would imagine, is kind of some of the key barriers that are coming through from young people, is just about them being able to gather that evidence kind of in a way that makes sense for, that actually for their skill set and organisational skills as well. So I think sort of finding a way to kind of streamline that and make that a bit easier for young people, and just using more youth-friendly language as well, kind of in the guidance and in the application process.
From that feedback as well, Zara, from the young people who are applying for it, is it making a difference, to them?
Yeah, I mean, and again, there wasn't a lot of time to kind of do some meaningful engagement with young people ahead of this committee. But again, we would always welcome, we work with thousands of young people every year, and, loads of them, they're always happy to share their lived experiences. So, we always welcome people to come out and hear directly from young people themselves. But I mean, we know from our development awards, which is very similar, that, absolutely it makes a difference to young people's lives, because the harsh reality is that for a lot of young people, without having that job start payment or kind of a bit of financial support, then it kind of locks them into poverty, or it means that actually the kind of financial reward of their first salary is kind of undercut by the kind of the extra expenses that you've often got when you start a new job, whether that's around travel or work clothes or, kind of, again, lunches, things like that. So it means that it gives young people that kind of really good start to be able to start a job and have a higher chance of sustaining it, which I think is really important, because we know that even when we're able to support young people into work, it's another challenge actually supporting them to sustain in the workplace. And that's a bit of a journey that, again, employability providers, we support that next step journey. The support doesn't end once young people have got a job or are in the positive destination. We know that they need that continual support beyond the job start, because they're kind of at risk of dropping back out of the labour market, because it's a change process. Actually, some of the challenges that they faced, whether it's kind of within their family or their household, or to do with kind of their mental health, those kind of challenges can rise again when they're facing a new kind of change circumstance. So I think it just, the job start payment gives them more of a chance of sustaining.
Thank you for that, Zara. Can I open it up to Graham or Joe in terms of kind of any improvements that we can have to increase the applications? Any kind of insight you've got that you want to share with the committee?
I think probably the biggest thing is that awareness. So it's getting the message out that this is there and can be a support. I would see that as probably the one big thing we can do, absolutely recognising all the other aspects around about the application process and how you can smooth that. But probably awareness would be the one area I would say focus on for us.
Thank you. Jo?
Yes, thank you. I mean, I know it goes without saying, we'd all prefer that the scaffolding was in place so we weren't in a position whereby we're having to try and think about raising awareness, and I fully appreciate that. I also would welcome the adaptations that have been made for care leavers, particularly to be able to try and support with that engagement. But I also note that it's 8% of Job Start payment applicants are care leavers, and I suppose I don't know the detail because what I have experienced from our workforce members in our care leavers into through care into employment education and training group is they were not really, it's anecdotal, but they haven't really mentioned the Job Start payment. And when I asked if they had any particular feedback around about committee, there wasn't it's not a theme that's come through. It's also not necessarily they've been raising on behalf of young people. And I do wonder if part of that is because, as you say, it's a one-off payment, so it's about the time in that kind of that period of time that's being explored. I also wonder if there have been barriers that have been faced at earlier stages in the process, if that has put people off. Because we also know that I saw that word of mouth was also about 15%, and I would certainly say that within the care experience community, word of mouth would be very, very clearly strong influence on whether or not this is something it's worth being taking the time to be involved in applying for, and length of time is very clear as well. So I suppose in short what I would recognise is that there's a relatively low awareness, I think, within care experience community and the through care and aftercare workforce to support. I didn't see about what a percentage was that were authorised for care leavers, so again that would be an interesting parallel to consider. And I suppose just recognising that there are going to be changes with the care experience and service planning bill around about the extension of application for aftercare. We have an increasing number of new Scots who, through legislation, will have an entitlement as a care leaver. I suppose there are other considerations in terms of that eligibility for future consideration, but probably need that consideration sooner rather than later when it comes to the whole awareness raising. Final thing I would say is happy to support ways in which to raise that awareness. Thinking about entitlements and rights is always something. I think Who Cares Scotland has a helpline because it's an increasing area of ask for both young people and also for workforce. So I think there are routes, and I suppose I also have a general interest about where employers are within this. I think with the family firm model and approach, for example, you'd expect that there will be routes into therefore being able to engage as a corporate parent employer, and how some of that might also be modelled in other ways as well. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Pam. And before, sorry, Karen, yeah.
Sorry, I just wanted to pick up on your question because obviously we do our own research in terms of what impact has Job Start payment had. So just to reference some of the feedback I think we get from young people who are eligible. So back to that 2022 evaluation and then a little bit through into our measuring our charter framework, which we do on an annual basis. So for us, young people reported improved confidence and reduced stress after receiving the payment, and that they definitely felt that it helped them to manage the costs that we've referenced earlier, so clothing, travel and childcare. And then just on the point around kind of the application and is it simple and straightforward, is it what's needed? So just on our last client satisfaction survey, that's November, we did see a really low return for Job Start payment, which I think is not unsurprising based on the evidence that we've heard here. So just 41 clients responded to our last client survey in relation to JSP, but 68% said that they rated their benefit experience as very good or good. 71% being treated with dignity, fairness and respect. And interestingly, 54% of young people said that they had first heard about the Job Start payment from the Department of Work and Pensions.
I think turnaround is key to this as well. I know there's been improvements there, but I think, you know, getting it at the right time and the right place for them, you know.
Yeah, so at the moment, based on the latest statistics, it's 20 working days median, but the 20 working days is from the point of application, not necessarily from the point of supporting information. And I think, again, what we've heard here is that we quite often do need to contact the young person back to talk to them about the evidence that they've submitted, to give them the best chance of providing the information to make that application be approved. That's not without its own challenges, because young people don't necessarily always want to pick up the phone, especially when it's an anonymous number. There are things that we've done in that route. So I think when I talked to committee back in January, I was talking about telephony improvements and the use of SMS messaging. So we'll now do that. We'll contact a young person by text message to say we are attempting to get hold of them, and could they give us a kind of day or time that we could have that conversation. But getting back in touch with that young person, getting the supporting information that we need, is a blocker, it is a barrier, and it does extend the processing times for applications.
Thank you. Thanks, Kevin.
Yeah, thanks very much. Before I bring in Carol, and then I think Bob would like to come in, just want to ask if you've got any views. Like, the local employment partnership is absolutely key with regards to young people and employment. Does anyone have any views on how well they're promoting the Job Start payment? No?
We're connected into them all, and I know that there is strong partnerships there. On the specifics of the promotion, I do know that they're good at putting information out, but then there's maybe a challenge of, is a lot of information coming out? So I can't give you a precise answer, but I do know that it will flow through those channels out to frontline staff.
Okay, thanks very much. Zara?
I think for me there is a, because, you know, for the LEP, so there's often, like, for example, there's a, you know, often a third sector rep kind of on the LEP. So then I guess it also depends on the representatives on the LEP, and then the communication that flows out from those reps to other parties, which obviously isn't, you know, the same in all places. But I think for me there's definitely a missing link just in terms of some of the stakeholders and partners that have been listed for promotion, like directly to the third sector and to organisations delivering employability services. There is a third sector employability forum that brings together third sector providers kind of operating in the system, and it's a kind of strategic forum hosted by a TSI, but it's got connection into Scottish Government Employability Directorate as well. You know, I don't know if there's already been connection into that forum, but it feels like that, you know, could be a good kind of step in terms of supporting some of the communications out, but then also putting on, you know, some events with key workers, like actually those that are working directly with young people, so that they can kind of hear more about the benefit and how to, because often actually for key workers, they will know, and kind of almost ahead of the game, like when young people are about to be offered a job or get them, because they're literally supporting them through the interview process. So they're in a really good position to get ahead of that application process. You know, so they know that the young, you know, if they've just had the, and they'll be on the phone to the young person, how did it go? Did you get the job? You know, and then they can hit the button and get moving with this stuff. And I think that to me just seems like a bit of a missing link at the moment, that direct connectivity to those kind of key workers in the system that have got the relationships with young people, because I think they are the ones to support some of that barrier removal about awareness and the process itself.
Well, that's helpful. Thank you. Thanks, Zara. I'm now going to invite Carol Mockin in. Thanks.
Hi. Obviously, in this kind of style, sometimes some of your things are answered, but I suppose I'm just trying to be clear, you know, because I think Zara's points that she just made a few minutes ago were very helpful, and what I was thinking about is that support to get the benefit. It seems to me that we should almost be in a position that we can just immediately help people to get it, rather than them having to think about applying for it. So I suppose my question is around, you talked that there's barriers. How do we break that down? Is it that we need to have different, you know, criteria or clearer criteria, so that it's easier for young people to understand what they're being asked to provide? Or, is that what you're saying, that young people are unable to provide the information, or that it's just complicated, so they find it a wee bit tricky to follow the whole process? And I suppose at the start we were saying that some people do it online, some people do it with support. Do we know how many people that are applying online do it online with support? Because I know sometimes you can attend your joint meeting and an employability person would actually help you go through it. So do we know any of that information?
So we definitely don't know, sadly, how many people are receiving support in the background while they're making their online application. As I said, we know that 93% of the applications come through. We'd also amended as part of a change to update the guidance to encourage young people to call us as well if they were unsure around their eligibility criteria, so that they could have a conversation with a client advisor up front. So, we don't want anybody to waste their time making an application if they're not eligible, but also that they could have that conversation either with a client advisor via the telephone or via web chat, or even out through our, as I said, local delivery teams in the community around what evidence that they need to submit and how to do that. So, but we wouldn't have any statistics on people sitting in the background helping that. But we know that we see that through stakeholders and third parties supporting individuals across all of our different benefits to make sure that they have the best chance of success. We do see in Job Start Payment a need and requirement quite often to go back to ask for additional supporting information.
No. Do you mind me asking, is it around like hard copies of stuff, or is it around they've just not worded it correctly? Or, do you understand what
I do.
So
as I said, the gov.uk guidance was amended to try and make the language more simple. But I think we all recognise that benefit delivery can sometimes be quite complex. And I think I take Zara's point around, language that resonates with young people in itself. So that can be quite difficult and quite tough. There are examples on there, and we have tried, I think, to make it as straightforward as we possibly can in terms of the requirements. So 3 pieces of evidence, 1 from the employer, 1 from the person, and 1 confirming the start date. Now, they don't have to be pay slips, they don't have to be a formal job offer, but they do need to be something that gives us those 3 pieces of information. We also, with consent of the applicant, can ask for the details or whether or not they're willing for us to contact the employer, so that we could follow that up if they need us to do so, or they're particularly vulnerable, or they need some additional support. But that's obviously a consent point. And then just, I think, going back to your other point, is that we're always exploring kind of data sharing opportunities, especially under kind of public sector reform principles. And I think we, again, from a Social Security Scotland perspective, we've talked about that in this committee before, about, is there more that we could be doing with data sharing across different government organisations or local authorities to try and streamline and make the process easier. I can't necessarily talk to that myself, because that would be a social Scottish Government policy piece of work that they would take forward. We would obviously want to feed into that and think about how operationally we can make the process much easier for the applicant. But there is kind of ongoing discussions and opportunities in that space.
Okay, thank you. Okay, thanks very much. Sarah, would you like to come in, and then I'll bring Bob in? Thanks.
I think just in terms of that, the kind of streamlining of the process, because quite a lot of the evidence that you're after is evidence that our key workers would have to be gathering with the young people anyway, because we also have to evidence the job outcomes for funders, and we have to evidence the young person's identity, and we have to, so actually it's probably paperwork that we would already have and it would save the young person another step of kind of getting it again and giving it to someone else. So I do think there is that kind of bit of, the streamlined bit in the process. Those kind of key workers could be quite key to it, and I guess on reflecting on it in terms of our own development awards that we distribute to young people, and there was 617 kind of given out in the last year, and it's for all of this. It's very similar in terms of it's that financial barrier, it's travel, it's childcare, it's clothing, and but it's a 2-week process from when they apply to when they get it, but it's very joined up. And that, it's kind of often a referral partner that we're already working with and has got connection with the young people that's, kind of doing the application. So then the kind of evidence is very streamlined. So, I think that there's definitely some learnings potentially from that process. And we could also do, we could get a bit of a focus group with young people who've experienced the development awards kind of process and how that worked for them. And then, again, alongside kind of a group that have maybe had the job start payment, and where is an opportunity to streamline some of it. I do think as well, because we know that, young people are more likely to connect where they've got, it's a kind of trusted organisation or brand, and sometimes, the kind of Social Security Scotland, DWP, they're just not necessarily in that category for young people. So I think, again, there's something for me just about who are the kind of, the trusted organisations or the youth brands that actually can support some of the activation of this. If there are barriers in terms of getting the word out through social media, because, of kind of Scottish Government, well, obviously, TikTok, Snapchat, all the rest of it, that's absolutely how we engage with young people, because we need to go to where they are, and that's absolutely where they are. So I think there's other ways, of doing it as well, but specifically targeting, because I noticed, young Scott is in there, but I think there is a role specifically for organisations that are doing youth employability work, and I think it has. So some of the organisations here are great, but I think it's like targeting even more to those organisations that are actually delivering youth employment, because all of those organisations are working to get young people into jobs, and that's really the kind of key element of this, the Job Start payment. So I think to be a wee bit more intentional with some of the partnerships would bring benefit.
No, thanks very much. I'm now going to invite Bob in. Thanks.
This will surprise you, because I'm going to forgo my question. I'm more interested to hear what the witnesses have to say. So,
oh my.
Yeah.
There you go. Are we putting that on record? Thanks very much.
Wipe that from the record, please.
I know. Thanks very much, Bob. I know. Joel, would you like to come in?
I was going to say it's possible to conclude with one thing. So, again, anecdotally, can't speak to the authorisation rate. I suppose if we think in any way what we know and hear from young people, again, is about how we simplify as much as possible and where the support is and around about it. And I suppose my message that comes from young people at all times is, as corporate parents, we know who our children are, and therefore we know who our care leavers are, and how we simplify the process as much as possible, because too often when we have thresholds that have to be met, that then becomes incumbent to evidence and prove your experience. And that is a message that we hear a lot from, and that's not directed particularly here, it is more broadly. How things like the data sharing, I think, are really important, because this is about how we change the system, which is about being the ambassador for our care experienced young people and being able to signpost them, but to support them alongside, and actually be able to say, you are entitled to this, we're going to get this for you, and this is how easy I'm going to make it for you. When we start having, when we continually have thresholds, we have to evidence, and we know that that in and of itself is a barrier. And I think the whole point of corporate parents is we know our children, and we would therefore know some will engage with us, some won't, but what's our role in ensuring that we make that as simple as possible?
Well, that's a good point. Thanks, Joel. Yeah, don't know if anyone else wants to come in on the theme. Okay, moving on to the next theme as well. I'm conscious as well of the time, and I believe it's Elena. I'll move over to you.
Thanks,
Thank you.
Convener. We've already kind of touched on this, which is really about the low authorisation rates and how that could possibly be addressed. I guess I'm looking to find out whether there's been, what the effectiveness of the measures that were implemented following the review were. But as we're talking, I'm thinking about, is there actually a disconnect that's maybe causing this? So if we think about DWP in 4-week housing payment or housing benefit run-on, that's something that's quite automatic if you're eligible for it. And I know that myself, when I was, a young person, which is many years ago, going into employment, that was one of the things that was a major consideration for me, was about the housing payments. How was I going to afford my rent as a young person, responsible for that on my own? And that type of stopgap, which existed at that point in time as well, was very helpful. Then it wasn't automatic, but it appears now that it's something that automatically happens and you don't have to actually chase it. So as part of the system issue, the fact that we're looking at two different systems, so we've got DWP that's holding all the information round about universal credit, and then we've got Social Security Scotland, which has this benefit, this is a standalone benefit here. And then we've got this, lack of awareness of uptaking it as well, but the system doesn't automatically apply it, where I think when that can happen, we then see authorisation rates obviously are increased because it's automatic and people know more about it. So is there something in that space that could, potentially be looked at or addressed? I don't know if anybody else has thought about that, but I just know that if something's automatic, it's going to be, done for people without them having to chase it. I'm going to ask Karen.
That's fine. Feel free to ask. I don't know the answer. And I think, as I said, Scottish Government are exploring ways to make this simpler. I am not at the table for those conversations, so I can't say whether or not that's being explored or not. We are definitely looking at ways to automate payments where we can, to support eligibility requirements and to lessen the kind of burden on applicants. I mean, fundamental here for us is that if people are entitled to the money, we want them to get it. And I think, Scottish Government absolutely recognise the need for this kind of bridging money to get people out of an unemployment situation and into work. And, I won't repeat the blockers and the barriers that we see in terms of getting the supporting information, all of that work that has been done in terms of trying to make it more accessible. So changing kind of the guidance, reducing the evidence requirements, and also the removal of trial shifts. So previously, I think trial shifts were then counted as a period of employment, which impacted on the kind of 6 month, have to be unemployed for 6 months eligibility. So those were also removed. But I think it is quite difficult because obviously young people are encouraged and supported to go for jobs and roles to get themselves into employment, which may then break and impact on the eligibility requirements for 6 months where it's a short-term role or placement. So I think we're fully cognizant that that is a difficulty for young people.
Do we feel as well, thinking about 16, 17-year-olds, so obviously understanding that that's different for those who are care experienced, yes. That criteria is not met in terms of their 6 month UC kind of, the universal credit and being out of work for that length of time. That's obviously difficult for somebody who's 16 and 17 who maybe has an opportunity in front of them to take up employment but comes from a very low-income household, who the travel, the cost of the clothes, etc. is going to be the barrier. And I know that that's a bigger discussion in terms of maybe what the committee has to think about asking the government. But is that a barrier for or I guess the authorisation rates? Are there individuals who are not eligible because of that criteria? They're not meeting that 6 month out of work because they're 16 and 17 and living at home, and they're maybe applying for it and not meeting the criteria, so therefore their authorisation is not going through?
Yeah, so there's kind of two key reasons, I guess, why applications seem to be denied, and that is broadly around the evidence requirements, and then finally around that 6 month. You've got to be having been unemployed for the 6 months, and then also, sorry, I'm just making sure that I get that right. So on the qualifying benefit for the minimum of 6 months, and then not receiving any income within 6 months. So I think our feedback and what came out of that evaluation in 2022 was that that still felt confusing. So whilst those steps were taken to kind of streamline some of that and make it more simpler for young people to navigate, I think it remains an issue, and it continues to be feedback that we receive that feels difficult around the eligibility criteria, and then finally on the supporting information. So those are the two things really that we hear from young people in terms of, or they are the things that mostly impact on the approval rate from applications.
Yeah, because I mean, it's very difficult for a 16 and 17-year-old to meet the conditionality in terms of universal credit eligibility as well. So that feels to me as if, you know, there's a cohort of young people who are going to be ineligible for the Job Start payment, regardless of whether, you know, they're actually getting the support or they have a job offer in front of them. That's me, I think. Yeah.
Zara would like to come in. Thanks.
Yeah, I'm just reflecting because I think, you know, the more that we can automate this or make it kind of part, you know, of the kind of a seamless journey for young people, the better. I think it strikes me as there's kind of two ways to do that. So obviously we can do that by automating through the existing system, or there are other benefits like the training allowance that young people receive as part of their No One Left Behind journey, and it's actually built into funding for providers. And I'm just reflecting, is there another way that we could kind of get this payment out to young people that's actually more streamlined as part of the No One Left Behind journey, if actually that's the target cohort as young people that we're looking to support into work. The training allowance it's only for 16 to 17-year-olds, it's £55 a week, but kind of that amount is then included in the funding for No One Left Behind journeys, and then organisations distribute and kind of get that money out to young people as part of the conditions of the support and the fund. You know, actually our youth workers think that it should be not just 16, 17-year-olds and the training allowance should be for older age groups, but, you know, that's for a different discussion. But I think there is just something for me about, is there a way that actually, because the end goal actually is that the young people have got the financial support to be able to enter the workplace and to get the job outcome. Social Security Scotland is one way of achieving that, but it's not the only way. So I think, you know, I guess I'm just reflecting, is there another way to look at this problem that's actually about how do we build it into No One Left Behind mechanisms? Because that's where you've got the kind of providers who are in direct contact with those that they're supporting into the workplace. So I think it's just a reflection in terms of, and it's not, it doesn't need to be an either or, it could be a, you know, a both, and kind of trialling mixed options to see what has the best result for young people.
No, thanks. That's really interesting, Sarah. Thank you. I'm now going to invite Bob in. Thanks.
I apologise, Camilla, I couldn't help myself.
It's good. Too good to be true.
I like the idea of like innovations about whether it's automation or whatever. And I know this wouldn't work for 16 and 17-year-olds, but I'm just looking at the universal credit rate for under 25s at the moment. For about a month, it's £316. The Job Start, that's for single person. The Job Start payment is £331.95. We're really talking about a 1 month run-on of benefit. Is what we're really talking about. If someone is in the UK benefit system, they will know if they're under 25, and they will know when they lose their entitlement to universal credit is withdrawn from them. So one innovation could be a 1 month run-on of universal credit, knowing that anyway before you accept a job, and then there can be a financial transaction between Social Security Scotland and DWP. I'm not saying that will work. The point I'm trying to make is we need to innovate and be more clever about how we do this. So if anyone's got any more ideas about how we can innovate and just be a bit more clever about this, I think it'd be really good to hear some of that this morning before we come to the end of an evidence session.
Does anyone want to come in?
And if not, that's okay.
No, but again, I suppose for us it's about what we take away from this and take forward as well. And it's about being solution focused for young people as well, getting into the job market. But one thing I might just finish on is, if any of you have got any one takeaway from today, what would you say for us taking this report forward? Anything? No? Graham?
My own reflections in the conversation, recognising that some of this is out with SDS space, but it's that desire to ensure that young people are at the heart of that process, and building on the advocates already out there to try and access and try and support them feels like one of the ways forward. We know that works in other areas where we've got, when you place the young person in the centre and you have the other people working around them. So it's how do we do this in this area as well? That seems to be a theme of the conversation that's come out in this morning.
Okay, thanks. Zara, putting you on the spot here.
Yeah, I mean, similar. I think, you know we get things right when we focus on the journey from the experience of the young people, and the outcomes we're looking to achieve for them. So I think when we bring that lens, actually the kind of young person's lens to what the experience of this kind of system issue is like for them, I think that's when we can design a better solution. And it's, there's a lot of the key components are kind of there, but I think the way it's currently stitched together just isn't quite right. For young people. So just, taking a bit of a different approach that's more solution focused. And I think there's definitely something in that. Where can we just automate it a bit more? Because quite a lot of this actually is relying on young people themselves kind of being aware that they're eligible, applying for the process. But, as Joe says, it's like we know who the young people are, we know where they are. So we should then be able to do something a bit more automatic for them. I think there's also, we've not spoken much about the role of employers, but I think also making sure that employers are aware of this, so that actually when they recruit a young person, they're also saying, have you applied for this? Do you know you're eligible? I think that's just a bit of a, there wasn't much discussion about the role of employers in this, but that's kind of a key one as well.
Okay. Yeah, okay. No, that's really interesting, in picking up on the employers aspect of it as well. Karen, would you like to?
Possibly not a takeaway, but just a commitment, I suppose, from us, from Social Security Scotland perspective, that we pride ourselves on being a learning organisation. These sessions are really important to be able to hear from people, to supplement and support the work that we do out in the communities and with stakeholder groups anyway. So, we're always looking for ways to improve accessibility, to make sure, as I said, the people that are entitled to the money get it, they get it quickly and they get it in at a time of need, and that it helps to support them. So look forward to the findings in due course. That doesn't mean that we won't continue to look on ways to refine processing, and also, some of the stakeholder conversations. I'm sure we'll take those away and pick those up offline.
Okay, thank you. And finally, Joe, if you get any.
I feel like I should finish with something profound being the last one, but it probably won't be the case. I think I would just welcome the fact that this is something that is available. That's really important. I've come away from here today knowing more than I would have known about it previously, which means that we can raise awareness as our organisation about the Job Start payment, and appreciate that there's work that's already been done, particularly from a caregiver's perspective, to make this as simple as possible. But bits I would continue always is done with young people, because then we will get the solutions in real time about what's working for them and with them in their lives, keeping it as simple as possible, and the continuing about the responsibility that we have. We have a commitment to being a trauma-informed nation. That includes employers. We have a commitment around about keeping the promise and around corporate pay. I don't think there has been a time where there has been more focus on how we can make the system work more effectively and more efficiently for those that it's there to serve. And so I think probably this is where this has that intersection with other bits that are happening. But also the final thing that I would take as a commitment away is that we will revisit this with our workforce membership, and the invitation to engage with them further in the next Parliament. Thank you.
Thanks, Joe. Just before I sort of kind of wrap it up, and just what you touched upon, Sarah, and Joe as well, in terms of employers, is there maybe an aspect from a young person's point of view that there's a stigma there? They're trying to make a good impression when they're going into a new job, and reaching out to an employer in terms of bus fare, train fare, stuff like that are reaching out, because, you know, they don't get paid in advance, you know, it's in arrears. And it's like, is there maybe a stigma there with regards to that, and reaching out and saying, is there any help that can be provided for me as well?
We obviously see stigma across applications for all benefits.
Yeah.
That's why we've tried to be really proactive in that space. So we're currently in the middle of our Tackling Stigma campaign. So we've got quite a lot that's going out on social media. I think, you know, we recognise that social security is a fundamental human right in Scotland, that any of us could need it at any point. So, you know, our comms and our approach are very much framed in that way. But I think we continue to recognise that there will be issues in that space. So all we can do is continue to tackle that, to raise awareness, to make sure from our perspective that when a young person or anybody claiming any kind of benefit contacts us, that they are treated with that dignity, fairness and respect, and that they are supported to make that application without stigma. But I think we do hear and see that young people sometimes feel reticent giving us the employer information that we need to process the application for exactly because of that point.
Yeah. Okay. No, thank you. No. So that sort of brings us to an end. So I want to say a huge thank you for all your evidence today. And again, if there's any points that we've not had a chance to raise, then please feel free to get in touch or follow up in writing as well, because I know Graham said he would provide the stuff in writing in relation to Project Search, so thank you for that. So we'll have a brief suspension to allow our witnesses to leave, and a huge big thank you again. It's been great. Much appreciated. Hi, our next item of business is consideration of a Scottish statutory instrument, council tax reduction, miscellaneous amendment, Scotland Regulations 2026, and I refer members to paper 3. This instrument is subject to the negative procedure. Do members have any comments on the instrument? No. Okay. Are members content to note the instrument?
Yes, content.
Okay, thank you. So that concludes our public business for today, and we will now move into private.